is up, hotties? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. And we're here to talk more about some NFL football. We, of course, have to talk about the Davante Adams situation. He went out of Vegas. Where is he going to end up? We have a little bit of a tier list game that we've planned for you all. Gonna tier every team in the NFL, starting with the NFC today. So we'll do it one half this episode, and probably next week we'll do the next half. But before we get into that, we'll maybe talk a little bit about Monday Night Football. But before we get into that, and the Stay Hot Locks, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing on this beautiful Wednesday evening?
I'm all right. I went and bought a new flannel today at a vintage shop, so that was pretty cool. And I walked there, so I was feeling like really, I don't know what the word for it is. Like I'm in my little walk, like I walk down there and I get it, and then I just walk back to my place. I don't even go in the car. It's at the vintage shop. It's sustainable. I mean, come on. It's too easy. So I'm feeling great about that.
To the store and get something, and it's like, it's such a vibe.
Oh yeah, it's such a vibe. But especially I don't have it on me, so I can't show it off.
Merch, and like someone's like, "Oh my god, is that you know Stay Hot?" I'm like,
I'm surprised you can get to and from the store.
What happened to me? I used to live such an interesting life. I used to have so much to report and break down at the beginning of each one of these episodes. Now, all I do is work.
It's actually sad what you've become, no lie. It used to be like I was in the woods 2 days and I got back just in time to watch the football and record the podcast.
I think the NFL season started. I'm trying to pinpoint when my life became boring and I started watching football all day. And I'm remembering a game between the Chiefs and the Ravens a couple weeks ago. And I feel like ever since that happened, I've just been watching a lot of football.
I mean, that is your job, so.
And what a job it is. But
it's a great job.
We go through it. And luckily, my lack of interesting things to talk about at the beginning of the show should translate to more interesting things later in the show. We'll see if that holds true.
I think it has held true so far. I think you've been pretty interesting. Thanks. I've been interested.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
Anytime, man. Speaking of Theo, I'm trying to think about a way to transition to this. Do you think Davante Adams is gonna be a Green Bay Packer?
Probably not, considering we have. I just don't know if he fits into the receiver room. We already have a lot of players better than him. Dontavion Wicks got off to a bit of a slow start, but he caught some garbage time passes, and now we're back.
Yeah, man.
Christian Watson is going to come back and be healthy for the rest of the year after he comes back from this last injury. And so, no, I don't think he'll be a Packer. But it is interesting that he no longer wants to be a Raider. I mean, it sounds like this isn't the most pressing trade request I've ever heard in my life, just based on how the insiders are tweeting about it. They're like, he says that he prefers to be traded, but like if they play next week and he's not, he'll probably be out there, right? So we'll see. I mean, if he is to leave, I guess the Raiders just have got to feel a little bit silly about the Antonio Pierce hire, was kind of my first thought. Like Adams and Crosby and the star players were really the ones banging the table for this guy. And then they hire him, and then one of them is like, actually, I prefer not to be here after they make this move, kind of based on their recommendation. That was my first, just where my head went, was like this whole offseason process it just continues to feel a little, rushed and forced from the Raiders and not necessarily a long-term answer. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not super shocked that Davante wants out. I mean,
Minshew is his quarterback.
He came to the Raiders.
That's the problem.
To the Raiders to play with his best friend Derek Carr, and now Derek Carr's not there, and the team sucks. So, like, what is the real incentive for him to stay in Vegas at this point if he could go. I imagine like what's the most prominent thing on his mind? Probably winning a Super Bowl. And if he can do that with a quarterback that he's played with, the Saints look like they've been pretty good, and we'll talk about where we think they rank in a little bit. And I've seen
why not
the
demand
Jets
to trade this offseason, though, then? Like, that's my question. It's like, why didn't this get this figured out?
He's kind of a hopeful guy.
Yeah, I guess
he went to the Raiders when they had Derek Carr, and he's like, that's going to work. And, like, it wasn't really looking that great, I think. Like, well, maybe was that the year right after they had made the playoffs kind of sneakily, or am I mixing up my timeline here?
They lost to the Bengals the year the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. That was in 21. Rodgers won MVP that year. He was still in Green Bay. 22 was the first year.
Right. So then he would have been.
Yeah.
So then he would have been like post a playoff berth. So like you can see it, but probably not. I don't know. I get it. I just think the post Derek Carr passing offense has been too bad for him to even feel like it's something that he can work through. And maybe he does really like Pierce, and that's why he's not, get me out of here. I'm not playing another game. I'm done. But I honestly think it'd be wise for the Raiders to trade him and move on. It just isn't going to turn into anything that helps you, and you're eventually going to have to, like, is it going to get to this offseason and things are going to be better? Probably not.
Right.
I feel like there's a good number of spots that make a lot of sense for him. I don't know if you guys had anywhere that you really wanted to see him go. The first one that lined up for me is obviously the Jets. I think they're the number one team that should make a move like this, and I think a lot of the Rodgers connection and the timelines match up there.
I don't like the Jets as a fit as much as it gets hyped and as much of a connection, and Rodgers is openly flirting with it happening, and maybe he can force their hand. My question for you, I guess, would be if they traded for Adams, like, where does that leave the Garrett Wilson project?
I think you can have multiple really good weapons there. I don't think it has to be one or the other. That shouldn't be your mindset, especially when, I don't know, I just don't love the weapons outside of those guys. I know Lazard's been playing okay, and maybe Conklin's had his moments, but I think if anything, getting Adams out there is going to make Wilson's life easier. But what I don't think that you can do is just roll through the season saying, well, it's got to be Wilson all the time and we can get shut down outside of him. And then you get to the playoffs, like, it just feels like that's definitely going to be a problem for him at some point.
I see what you're saying. I do think like a better second weapon would definitely improve their Super Bowl ceiling. I feel like when they get to the playoffs, if they are to make a deep run and figure some things out, it will definitely get tougher and tougher on those second weapons, Mike Williams, Allen Lazard, when they do focus a ton of coverage attention to Wilson, which they've been doing, right? Having both of them could be a force multiplier. I just feel like the Wilson and Rodgers connection has been kind of bad these first 4 weeks. There's been a lot of yelling, kind of hands up in the air, like, why aren't you where you're supposed to be? Why did you throw it like at that time? I just feel like the two of them just have not been completely on the same page.
All the more reason to bring in Davante, man.
But then Davante and Rodgers do kind of have that connection where it's like they have or they did in Green Bay. They had those just a couple like they just had that communication before the snap. Like they had a couple answers versus everything that they could just routinely go to over and over again. I feel like Rodgers and Wilson need to develop that, and bringing in Adams would stunt that for Wilson. I feel like he could become kind of the wide receiver too. All of a sudden he's like, what the hell? I thought I was the alpha guy. I just feel like their receiving core should kind of be set right now. I feel like adding Adams to this, which is already kind of, people are frustrated. Like Rodgers is frustrated with Saleh. Wilson, I think, is frustrated with Hackett and maybe even Rodgers. Rodgers might be frustrated with Wilson. I just feel that on 3 of the 4 games on tape. And I feel like if you brought in Adams, like maybe everything would get better, but also maybe they would be like, okay, now really what's our formula? That's my only concern. But
I don't know. I just can't see how that, if they have the connection already, I just can't see how that would make the offense worse.
It would be, is it worth the pick? Is it worth the money, the trade? Because they already are supposed to have that guy in the building with that ESP with Rodgers, and they don't have it. Like, Garrett is very good. Rodgers, I think, still has it. Like, I think he's very good. Their connection just has not been I think, like, that's the number one thing that you need to figure out. And you need to work and practice on figuring that out. You don't need to make a trade. You don't need to do all this, I think, because Lazard hasn't been they've had a lot of drops, certainly. But Lazard has also made his share of big plays. Mike Williams is coming along after the injury. Like, I think they have the guys in the skill position room to be okay with a little bit more time, potentially. But if you want to say,
the real answer is that I don't want them to do it because Lazard's on one of my fantasy teams. So
I think that making Garrett Wilson the number 2 receiver and him not seeing number 1 cornerbacks all the time probably does not make things harder for the connection between him and Rodgers.
Right.
And if Rodgers is just cooking with Davante Adams, I don't even know if that's necessarily the biggest downside. Yeah. This passing offense to me just feels like it definitely can come along, and I think it will, but it lacks that, like, crazy superpower unless Rodgers really starts to return to form in a way that maybe he hasn't, and it just doesn't have, like, the horses for a, like, super veteran, maybe less mobile Rodgers for me to think that, like, they're going to actually go, like, get it done in the AFC. Mm-hmm. My thinking is that maybe you already kind of do have the guys. I agree, like, you signed Mike Williams to play him. And you have Lazard, and, like, you want him out there. And adding in a fourth guy definitely leaves somebody as the odd guy out. But I think with their age, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to be a little bit too deep. And the big one is that if you're the Jets, the price just is not that big of a deal to you because your timeline, your window here is so short. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, you could say, like, Williams, what if he gets hurt? Like, who has stood out? Corley? But you just drafted Corley on day 2, you know? Like, maybe he has to be the guy. Like,
has Corley...
He's made one catch for 0 yards.
Yeah, I think
you're
it's
right.
Like,
you're right.
The way I see... I don't know if trying to build out this, like, chemistry with Rodgers is the play unless you had, like Matt said, unless your window was bigger. Right, but, like, how many years does Rodgers really have with this team? Like, this year, maybe next year, realistically. Yeah. So I would try and do anything you can to be as good as you can right away. And if that's bringing in Davante Adams, I think you stomach the pick, you stomach the cost because you've already kind of put all your chips in on Rodgers.
I see what you guys are saying. I understand you shouldn't really let, like, maybe Allen Lazard get in the way of adding a guy like Davante Adams. I get all that. I get the connection that they have. I just worry about so many other parts of this offense. Like, would adding Adams make the connection with Garrett Wilson worse? And then, second of all, the main problem that the Jets have is their offensive line right now. I feel like Tyron Smith is playing terrible. Mekhi Becton is making us not Becton. Fashanu playing right tackle was just a disaster versus Denver, I thought. It was his first start, so it's fine. But I know everybody's head goes right to the Jets. I just personally didn't think the Jets made the most sense to me. I thought the Steelers made sense considering that they basically had a trade done for Ayuk.
Davante doesn't want to go to the Steelers.
That's my thought too. I think I don't know. I don't see why he'd want to go to somewhere with an unsure quarterback position. That's like the one thing you're trying to upgrade from.
What are your thoughts on Baltimore?
Baltimore, that's the spot I like the most. I think Baltimore really could use a isolation X receiver on the boundary. When they lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs last year, that was one thing they routinely ignored. Bateman is kind of that guy for them right now. If they want to say, look, it hasn't worked. He is not giving us the value that he needs to give us. Let's go get a guy like Davante. I think at this point it's fair to say that about Bateman, right? Like it's fair to cut ties with that. Cut bait on the experiment. Like I know that he's been fine. Like he caught a touchdown that was kind of nice 2 weeks ago, I think, and they just won big time. So maybe there's no real reason to make a ton of big changes to the offense. I just feel like You've got Flowers kind of as your gadgety slot guy. You've got Henry, who looks still very good. Obviously, Lamar can make it work with everybody. You got the two good tight ends. It's just that boundary threat going from Bateman to Adams could just take it to another level. That's the one where I think Bateman is easier to kick out of the starting lineup than I think any of the three Jets wide receivers, or Aguilar. So the Baltimore Ravens are one where I think it would make a lot of sense. But as a wide receiver, famously, wide receivers don't love being in Baltimore. Like, they run the ball so
Greg
much.
Roman's not there anymore.
You're right that Greg Roman's not there anymore, though. So I don't know why
Ravens
Adams
fans.
would say
Ravens
no.
fans have been clamoring for the fire Harbaugh narrative recently.
Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that.
Yeah. And then there's the Saints.
I think the Saints is pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
Unless it's really just he loves Derek Carr that much. Running back the trade to Carr would be so funny. I mean, they could use
it. It could work this time.
But
Carr's balling right now. He's balling off that play action.
Can the Saints take on another contract like that as well?
Well, my question is okay, so are you benching Shaheed? Are you I feel like they're already seeing a lot of they already like to get big. You're going to put somebody on the bench. Maybe they put Shaheed in weird places, but it feels like less touches for other guys. You already want to get touches if that's how we want to look at it. They could take on a big contract. I mean, they always find a way, but to me, it just seems like if it's a really run heavy scheme and they've already got a number one in Olave there. It's like another receiver just feels like not their biggest problem. The reason why that you would circle that one and say, is because of Carr. If that's the number one thing he cares about, then, I'm sure they can make it work. But I like Baltimore. They need a real boundary guy. I think the Jets are aggressive enough and they need to go all in. Dallas is interesting. I see the vision if they want to trade for him, and certainly I think Adams should be happy to go there, right? Because they've got plenty of guys that could kick out of the starting rotation, no problem, from what I've seen. I will say, for a team that is as passive as Dallas has been recently, trading for Adams would be a crazy step. And while it would definitely, I think, bring their passing offense to another level, and it would be hard to imagine that they couldn't really cook, you've got to wonder, dude, is it really going to fix all of their problems? Do you feel really that good about them? I don't know. It just seems like an aggressive move. They're a team that traded away a wide receiver to save money. Now they're going to trade for a wide receiver to save money. If it happens, I can see the vision. But it definitely feels like a Band-Aid on a pretty big wound.
I could also see Cleveland, Blaiden. I mean, Amari Cooper is kind of starting to be get me out of here. He could be involved in the package. They could get Davante back and feel like they upgraded. The Raiders keep that same offensive strengths and weaknesses the same. Maybe Amari. I guess he already played for the Raiders, didn't he? I wonder if that would have anything to do with it.
I've thought about the Cleveland move. I feel like Davante would be extremely unhappy. I feel like he's a receiver.
Yeah, we've got this receiver who wants out. Well, why? Why does that receiver want out?
I feel like Davante is a guy that he wants to be with a quarterback that can execute timing. Just because he's just such a precise route runner.
Execute timing.
and Watson he hasn't shown an ability to do that consistently.
Maybe the Falcons, they've been adding so many people all off. They traded for Judon. They added 2 safeties in free agency. They're still starting Ray McLeod out there. I wonder.
Hey, Ray McLeod
they're
kind
playing
of
a ton of 11 personnel. He did. Commanders as well. They were in kind of on Ayuk. They've got McCaffrey in the slot and Ertz and McLaurin, but maybe another boundary threat, and go all in. Well, Jaden is looking so good, and the NFC East kind of looks like you could make a run at it. I don't know. I think.
I mean, the rumor is that Davante wants to be with a quarterback that he's played with before, but.
And then there's the The rumor is he wants to be with a quarterback he's played with before. Does that just mean Rodgers or Carr?
Rodgers and Carr. Like,
I don't know.
That's what I've seen, is that like those are the two top teams because Davante wants to be with one of those guys. But
yeah, maybe. I think nothing ever happens, right, guys? We'll.
It definitely does feel like it could possibly go down that road.
There's no way the Raiders would send him to Kansas City.
I think if Kansas City offered enough for Davante Adams, I think that the Raiders should say yes. Like, if they could get something really good from that, like something they really felt good about, maybe like 2 seconds. I don't know. They were really desperate, and they felt like they could fleece Kansas City in a way. Like, obviously Kansas City would be getting a very valuable asset. They could win another Super Bowl, but some team is going to win the Super Bowl and it's not the Raiders. Like, do you really care if it's the Chiefs or another team? Like, obviously you'd have to see them twice a year, but you're probably not winning that game against the Chiefs like anyway. Like, you're selling these assets. If the Chiefs give you the best offer, I don't necessarily think, like, the Chiefs are going to be good regardless. I don't necessarily think you should be totally like, no, but we just don't see those types of big trades within the division. So it is a little bit hard to predict it. Plus, we don't know much about the extent of Rashee Rice's injury. I could see it being the Chiefs.
I was about to say, what if you package Rashee Rice in the trade?
What if
a second in Rashee Rice?
Are they getting Max
Davante
Crosby?
What?
A second and Rashee Rice?
A second
Rashee
and
Rice
Rashee
is
Rice.
a better asset by a lot.
Why, because he's younger?
Yes.
Yeah, and he's on a way cheaper contract.
And at this point, he might be.
Money and age isn't everything, you know.
Where are we ranking Rashee Rice and Davante Adams in a wide receiver ranking? Like, on top of the age and contract, like Rashee Rice is looking pretty good.
Let me make the wide receiver ranking quiz real quick, and we'll
go from there. I don't want to get into all of that, but yeah. I don't think Rashee Rice would be included in the trade package.
Yeah, they'll send Xavier Worthy and
no, not him either. How about you get a second round pick and you get Carson Steele?
Carson Steele.
You get Wiley and you can run 13 personnel.
So real.
Kelsey for Adam. How about Kelsey for Adam straight up?
Come on, man.
Washed for washed.
Washed for washed.
A couple little 3 tight end jumbo all the time for Vegas. I see
Bowers, Meyer, and Kelsey out there every snap.
They just need to embrace the lateral idea. They don't need Davante Adams. They need to bring Tony back. I saw JSN hit the lateral in the Monday night game, which we should talk about next. Come on, Chiefs. They're stealing. Someone's getting out in front here.
You've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Wendy's new saucy nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're really a heat seeker, try spicy ghost pepper, only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. I dare ya. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's gotta be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's locations. I assume when we talk about the Monday night game, you want to talk about Lions Seahawks, not Titans Dolphins.
I have yet to watch a single snap or play from Titans Dolphins. I think that'll be my plan tomorrow.
Okay, me too. So I'm glad that we're in the same boat there. First of all, we can't talk about this game without saying that Jared Goff was perfect. 18 for 18, 300 or almost 300 yards.
How about those Lions?
2 touchdowns, dude.
How about those Lions, huh?
They look really good.
I'm just saying. 42 groins on Seattle's mighty defense.
Not groins.
It's sick. It's sick stuff. I don't care who was out.
What is groins?
Seattle's offensive line. Let's hear the excuses. What was it, 1,000 pressures?
Cross should follow the best defensive lineman like Darrell Revis was my thought.
I'd like an offensive lineman to demand
Charles
a trade.
Cross Island.
We will never get it done on this offensive line. They're making me look like shit. I'm out of here. Send me to a good unit like a wide receiver would do when the quarterback can't play. I'd like to see it.
Here's what I want. So, yes, you mentioned injuries, Matt. Boye Mafe out. Uchenna Nwosu out. Leonard Williams out. Byron Murphy II out for the Seattle Seahawks.
So next man up.
So they weren't getting a lot of pressure, and I thought the linebackers could have done a better job holding up after Goff would be hitting like 360s and they'd go after him and he'd just throw it right behind them, and they hit the play action and they'd have to robot. That wasn't too pretty. Just in general, just it's a bad team to be light in your front seven against. And when you're playing the two high shells against the Lions with no defensive linemen and no linebackers, this is what can happen to you. They can go 18 for 18, the highest completion percentage that I can find in the True Media database.
Well, 100%, you're not going to find higher than 100%.
You're right, but some people go like 9 for 9. You know, you've probably heard of that happening before.
Oh yeah.
Not since 2000 has anybody besides Goff gone 100 on more than 20 dropbacks. So
that's
pretty
special.
Yeah.
And he also caught a touchdown.
And
he also caught one. They were in their bag that game, man. The Lions, I think. The defensive line for them looks really strong. I know it's against a weak Seattle offensive line, but Hutchinson has been a demon this year. And I think that part of the team is really rounded out. I think they have more juice at corner than they did before. Arnold has some highs and some lows, but dude, Carlton Davis... He had one play in the end zone. I don't remember what quarter it was, but he had a horrible flag, and I almost clipped his reaction and put it out there because he was like celebrating and he saw it and it was like a sitcom or something, man. His face like dropped and he was like, man, he's killing me, dude. He was pissed that whole game, dude.
No, go. Keep talking.
I'm just if that can continue to round, like if they can limit their penalties, because they were getting penalties like crazy. I think they can be better than they were last year. I do.
Do you know how many pressures Aiden Hutchinson has so far through 4 games?
He's got to have like 30.
He has 40.
Oh.
40 pressures and 7 sacks through 4 games. Dude.
Things have just lined up for him going up against backups every week. Happened in the Rams game. Happened in the Bucks game.
He's the Jaden Daniels of edge rushers.
Who did they play?
Everything's lined up for them, but for not our precious Seattle Seahawks. No, they play 3 trash offenses and then they're hurt.
I know. I'm just messing around.
No, you're not. No, you really mean it. It is a little tough to get a read on Seattle's defense so far, is my takeaway. I like a lot of the pieces that they have, but really they played 3 very bad offenses, and then they were pretty banged up against a good offense with the Lions.
I agree.
I think Detroit is every bit as good as they were last year, and Jamison Williams has looked like a serious number 2. It's not been a problem for them. Their offense is as complete as it can possibly be, outside of the fact that maybe we don't think Goff is like an elite guy, and that was like the thing that holds them back. But even then, Goff just had a great game, and Goff can have great games and consistently does. He doesn't have maybe like the creation ability of other guys, but the offense they just cook, man. They're just fantastic, dude. They can do so much, and they can. And in a year where it feels like you need to be able to run, maybe nobody is more equipped to just go at you than them.
I agree.
What is up, hotties? It's almost time to trade in those summer jerseys for fall sweaters. But just because the season is about to change doesn't mean your wellness routine has to fall off. Whether you're catching those last few summer rays or gearing up for the NFL season, Factor's got you covered with meals that keep you fueled and ready. With Factor, you get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. No prep, no mess, and no stress. Whether you're aiming to cut calories, boost protein, or stick to keto, Factor's got 35 different meals and over 60 add-ons to choose from every week. And the best part, they're fresh, never frozen, and ready in just 2 minutes. That's quicker than a lot of your fantasy draft picks. Crush those wellness goals with Factor's restaurant-quality meals featuring premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. And it's not just dinner. Factor's got you covered from breakfast to dessert, making sure you stay fueled and satisfied all day long. So what are you waiting for? Head to factormeals.com/stayhot50 and use the code STAYHOT50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code STAYHOT50 at factormeals.com/stayhot50 to fuel up, stay healthy, and kickstart the NFL season right. What is up, hotties? You know that when it comes to NFL football, Stay Hot has you covered. But who do you turn to when you need to make smart financial decisions? If your answer is our sponsor, NerdWallet, then you're absolutely right. And if it's not, then allow me to change your mind, because not only have they spent thousands of hours researching and reviewing over 1,300 financial products, but they have the tools you need to make smarter financial decisions. Looking for a credit card? Go beyond the basic comparisons. Filter for features that matter to you and read in-depth reviews. Ready to choose a high-yield savings account? Get access to exclusive deals and compare rates, bonuses, and more. House hunting? View today's top mortgage rates for your new home sweet home. So while Stay Hot is your go-to resource for NFL football, make the Nerds your go-to resource for smart financial decisions. Head to nerdwallet.com/learn more. NerdWallet. Finance smarter. Disclaimer, NerdWallet Compare Inc. NMLS 1617539.
I'm thinking about this in just the structure of the episode as we're recording it here. We're talking about the Lions and Seahawks here and how good they are. We're at about 30 minutes of podcast time. Instead of talking about Monday night and then going right into the NFC tier list, do you want to continue this conversation in the tier list section of things when these teams come up with the rankings in the rankings?
Yeah, I don't see why we can't do that. For those that don't understand what we're about to do, and
I've never seen a tier list before.
They've never seen a tier list before.
Perhaps don't know what the word means.
Yeah, we've basically got 4 tiers that we're going to rank every team in for the NFC. And we didn't classify like what each tier means. It's just like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. And we'll kind of leave it up to general interpretation, I think. If we want to have a discussion on semantics, we can. But I really don't want to spend like 30 minutes debating like, well, what does it really mean to be a Super Bowl
playoff mid-bad.
Mid-bad. Well, what does mid really mean? You know,
we'll find out.
We'll find out. But yeah, let's talk about, you know, where both of these teams could rank in the tier list. We can start with the Detroit Lions if we want to do that.
Yeah, I've got them in tier 1, and maybe we can just start with just what tier 1 is, and if the Seattle Seahawks fall into it. I think I completely agree with you, Matt. They're built to win in this league that is getting more too high, that has gotten lighter in the box over the past several seasons of just the linebackers, the defensive linemen that have come out of the draft. They can just run you straight over. Gibbs and Monty are an incredible duo. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown can do his thing. And the breakout of Jamison Williams is exactly what they needed. I don't think they can be much happier than what they've gotten out of him. The 360 pass that I mentioned, like he runs the comeback and then he works back to Goff and makes a nice catch. Like it's not just... I think about like Xavier Worthy, right, and what he's looked like over the past 4 weeks. He caught kind of a coverage bust and an end around where people kind of lost contain. I feel like Jamison Williams has been a little bit more than that. He's been able to block in their scheme at a high level. He's able to make tough catches over the middle or in a possession situation. Their defensive secondary is looking better. they've got guys who are just crazy physical on the both boundaries, and it has resulted in flags, but it also has resulted in them maybe holding on a little bit more than they did last year. I know that the DK Metcalf kind of torched them, but they got really torched by everybody last season. Run defense has been good. Aiden Hutchinson has been balling out. Jack Campbell has gotten better. So everything is kind of fitting together for them. The first 3 weeks, Goff was just playing a little below his standard, but now he's coming off an 18 for 18 game, and I think you should be expecting him to look a little better, or a lot better than he did the first 3 weeks from this point going forward. So they don't have some of the concerns that like Green Bay has for me with like, man, there's no one in that front seven that's really showing me anything. Like I think that they, or the 49ers, like, man, what is McCaffrey? When is he going to be back? Is he going to look the same when he does? Like, I really think the Lions have a case to be the top team in the NFC right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I had them in tier 1 as well. I don't think it's really debatable. They're a team that was a couple of plays away from a Super Bowl last year, and they feel even better right now. Certainly they're not perfect. Certainly the secondary has to come along, but it's young enough and they add enough pieces where I hope that it can improve in a way that some of these other teams that I have lower feels like they have a problem that isn't going to solve itself. That being said, even if it is a problem, no team is perfect. So expecting them to be just flawless is ridiculous. Their offense is very stacked right now, and defensively they have more juice. I have them tier 1. I've been high on them for a minute. I got them making the Super Bowl. They're my best team in the NFC.
Yeah. Well, we don't really need to have a debate there then. We're kind of building a consensus list here. We all have them in tier 1, so they'll go in tier 1. On Seattle, though, I'm curious. I have them in tier 2 right now.
Yeah, they're not quite tier 1 for me. But Blaiden, you should explain why you think so.
Well, I'm curious to see where Matt has them because I have a funny feeling he might want to put them in tier 3. The main concern with this team is the defense. Because like we're saying, they haven't really played anyone when they've been healthy that can really challenge this defense. And so we really need to wait to see when they get healthy. But as far as the offense goes, I mean, Geno's been outstanding. You talk about quarterbacks that have played amazing this year. Geno's been one of the best. I mean, he's just been pinpoint accurate. He's been great under pressure. He's made great decisions. He's like everything that you would expect from a high-level quarterback he's doing. And as long as he keeps doing that and the receivers keep playing well, Ken Walker had a great game against Detroit. Like, as much as we want to talk about, the Lions defense looks really good. I mean, Seattle still hung 30 on them. It was just like the defense was so banged up that they weren't really going to have a chance to win that game. But the offense came to play for sure.
Yeah, the defense, I liked that Matt said we just have no idea what they could be by the end of the year. The circumstances have just made it so hard to get a clear look at what they're capable of or what their weaknesses are if they were at full strength. So that being an unknown prevents them from being in tier 1 for me, and then just the interior of the offensive line just getting killed every single week. It's rough. Cross is really their only guy that you feel okay about, and even he isn't quite an elite tackle at this point. I think struggles maybe a little bit defending speed to power and can get pushed in a little bit. So really across the board, Geno has been under constant pressure, but he is elite to me. He is top 10 pretty easily, higher than that maybe. The accuracy, like you mentioned, Blaiden, has been off the charts since he became the starter. Super poised, aggressive, trying to make plays, and hits a lot of them. Just don't know what else you could ask for from him.
I agree. I have him in tier 2 as well. I think they've got a pretty big interior offensive line problem, and we don't know about their defense, but I think they got enough pieces there. I feel like they're probably going to be pretty good. And you can only play the teams in front of you, and you can only play the guys who are healthy. So
right.
I don't have any big negative statement for them yet. We'll just say.
Yet.
The Ken Walker top 5 agenda, it's brewing. I think I think I ranked him top 5 in our running backs list this offseason, right?
Did you?
I think I had him pretty crazy high, and then
I can pull up the list.
Yeah, you don't have to.
The next team.
But it's true. He's very elite.
Yeah, he had a good game.
and will continue to do so. But who else do you guys have in tier 1? I want to go.
I'll give the. Well, I don't even know if there is an obvious next team, but I'll say the next most obvious team is probably San Francisco. Another team that's been dealing with some injuries. But I think another quarterback that has just been on the top of his game. I put out a tweet. I think the NFC West has 4 quarterbacks that can all be considered as top 10 caliber guys. Brock Purdy, to me, is playing the best football of his life. I mean, he has been outstanding under pressure. I think his decision-making has been like a step up from where it has been. And I think his accuracy has been a step up from where it had. Like, I think everything that he's been doing this year is like head and shoulders making him into that top 10 conversation.
Yeah, I've still got the 49ers in the tier 1 as well. Fred Warner is playing like the defensive player of the year. Just an unbelievable job by him. They have been suffering a lot of injuries, and Brock Purdy hasn't
been playing well.
Ayuk hasn't been playing super well, and they're still pretty damn efficient. I know Brian Flores kind of tricked Purdy a little bit, didn't have his greatest game there. But I really think they can get back on track after this 2-2 start and become the best team in the league again. Jawan Jennings has turned out to be an absolute monster. He's keeping them afloat. George Kittle is coming off a fantastic game. Jordan Mason, obviously, like doing what he needs to do. I just think that I don't have too much to say about the 49ers.
They lost to a good Vikings team and a wonky one to the Rams. It's just panicking over a couple of one-score games where it's not like they looked horrific or anything.
Right.
Isn't anything to worry about them. So I have them in tier 1 as well. And then I got one more team. I have the Vikings in tier 1.
All right. So we agree on Theo, do you as well?
I wasn't quite sure what to do with this. I had them in tier 2 just because of Darnold, to be honest with you. Just a few too many turnovers with him over the course of his career, sacks and negative plays. Obviously against the Packers, he got stripped. He's been very explosive. He's been hitting so many big time throws. They look so great. They've beaten so many good teams that I was just debating, like, man, do I think that they're in the same tier as the Lions and 49ers have, especially because they already beat the 49ers. But I'm thinking by the end of the year, like, with the 49ers maybe getting some guys back here soon or to fuller health, I just don't, deep in my gut, consider the Vikings the same level of contenders as the 49ers. But maybe that's a mistake for me because there's really no unit you can point to on this team that's been weak at all so far this season.
The defense has been outstanding. Brian Flores has been an absolute god of a play caller defensively. And like, we can have our criticisms about Darnold and his like cumulative career, but to this point, he's been mostly on. Like, the connection with him and Jefferson has been outstanding, and he's been able to get other guys involved. Naylor, I'm blanking on Addison. There we go. Yeah. So like, until he like has a true stinker, I don't know if I'm willing to really count them out at this point.
Brock Purdy had a really bad stinker against the Ravens last year.
True.
Yeah.
Jared Goff has not been fantastic this season. I think I would take those two guys over Darnold still. I'm not very bought into the idea that he's an MVP candidate when he's not the best player on his own offense. Even though he's been playing really, really good, I think we're obviously going to see a downturn probably at some point. But I don't think he's what makes them great. I think their weapons are what makes them great, and their defense is what makes them great. And you can say, like, the personnel here just doesn't seem like it should be good enough for them to be this good. But the reality is like they've gone up against, in a row, 3 really good offenses: the Packers, the Texans, and the 49ers. And they've been great against all of them. So I don't know how you can possibly discount what they've done so far. defensively. And even if Darnold is at some points going to be a little bit of a liability or is maybe more prone to bad games than other guys, they don't have to be perfect for them to be in tier 1. I don't think they're perfect, but at this point, like, I kind of expect them, especially with the schedule. I mean, I hate to point to it, especially with the schedule that's like really not that tough. I kind of would be like, it would be a big disappointment if they did not win the North easily. And I think even after 4 games, the expectations for them should rise. They've looked great. So they might be my lowest team in tier 1 because you want to wait a little bit to put them up. I get the logic behind too. I was having the same debate, but
yeah, they're either I just 1 or top of 2.
I just went back. That's like, well, their defense has just been too good against too good of opponents for me to leave them low. And we've seen Jefferson take over games a way that like only quarterbacks feel like they can take over, where it's like he just goes out there and wins it for them. I don't know. I think they're that good right now. I do.
Yeah, I can see the vision. I'm fine with putting them in tier 1 if we're making a collective ranking here. I can really get talked into it. That they just have so many pieces that you look for. And yeah, maybe Darnold is going to put the ball in harm's way, but you like him being aggressive. You like him pushing the ball down the field and trying to create plays out of structure and doing all that. It's probably going to equal more points than not for them over the course of the season. And Darisaw and O'Neal, like, they're protecting him super well, and that should continue. They're getting Hawkinson back. Addison has missed 2 games. Their front 7 and just their defense in general, it does feel like it has a lot of stars. It doesn't feel like they're just, the result of some, well-coached games against bad offenses or anything like that. Like Cashman is legitimately fantastic. Metellus is legitimately fantastic. Harrison Phillips, I feel like, is legitimately fantastic. Like Bynum, super, super good players all across the board there. Like maybe they don't have a Nick Bosa or even an Aiden Hutchinson, I'd say, although Grenard has certainly been a problem this season.
Good player.
Yeah, I can get down with putting them at the bottom of tier 1 after the start that they've had. I can live with that.
Yeah, I mean they're 4-0. I don't know what more you want them to do, and they beat good teams.
It's still kind of that those questions that I had at the beginning of the season and questions about Darnold over the course of his career that make me think like, hey, when it comes down to it, they're probably not the biggest Super Bowl contenders in the conference because of that. But Matt, you make a good point. Like Purdy and and Goff have had low points as well, and are the other guys in this tier 1.
Yeah. So that's tier 1. We already have Seattle in tier 2. Another team that I have in tier 2 is the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty straightforward. We talked about them a lot last game and how they matched up head-to-head with the Vikings. Really not concerned at all about Jordan Love in the offense. I'm really not. I know that he's 0-2 so far this season, lost to the Eagles, lost to the Vikings. Not great. Mid. But he did put up 29 points on the Flores defense, and he did have a ton of highlight plays. Like they got some of those blitzes protected. He kept his eyes downfield and hit some crazy ones in the middle of the zone coverage. He has the lowest pressure to sack rate in the league so far this season, and he's dropped back plenty of times in the 2 games that he's played, which matches. He had the lowest pressure to sack rate in that back half of last season as well. So the fact that that's continuing, the big plays are still there. Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson does look like a good running back tandem. I think Tucker Kraft is starting to emerge. The skill position room can play better. I feel like the offense, I think, is prone to maybe not the entire rest of the season. Who knows when it'll happen? But for a stretch this year, I think they're very capable of looking like the best offense in the conference for a while, or Jordan Love even looking like the best quarterback in the conference. But like I mentioned on the last episode, not enough pressure on Hurts, not enough pressure on Darnold to stop anybody. And both games against contenders have been an absolute shootout. And I think it's tough to go through the playoffs that way when the Vikings defense is looking so good and the 49ers and Lions defense is even looking better.
Yeah, it was the concern coming in with Green Bay too. Like the defense, like just hasn't quite lived up to the expectation. So until it does that, it's hard to put them in tier 1.
Yeah, that was my thought as well. I also had them until the offense will get better, but the defense I just think has limitations.
Yep. What other teams do you have in tier 2? Theo?
I'll go with some obvious ones here that maybe we can spend not a ton of time on.
Sure.
I got the Eagles on tier 2 so
I
far.
agree.
I know that they're coming off a pretty bad loss to the Buccaneers, but I mean, they're lost. Smitty and AJ are gone, and so is Lynn Johnson. It's like John Ross is out there. Johnny Wilson is out there. Grant Calcaterra is a major player in the offense. It's like it's not going to be that way at the end of the season, right? Like once they get these guys back, the offense should be fine. I am worried about the defense, definitely, and you guys can take it from here, but I just don't think that this loss to the Buccaneers knocks them out of tier 2.
Yeah, I was working on a way to hot takeify them missing Davante Smith and A.J. Brown. Here's one that sounds true. They have the biggest gap between like the play they get from their wide receivers when they have their top 2 guys versus the play they get from their wide receivers when they don't have their top 2 guys of any team in NFL history. Could be true because them running out John Ross is crazy.
Yeah,
we are living in crazy times for them, dude. I agree. I think clearly they've shown that like when their offense has all the pieces together and they stop like shooting themselves in the foot, it's going to be pretty crazy. And I know a lot of people maybe point at Sirianni and say, I don't know if the fourth down decision making is going to get better, which is totally fair. Or maybe they say Jalen Hurts has thrown, a lot of interceptions recently, which is totally fair. But I have a lot more faith in that to balance itself, especially since they can just run the ball so well compared to maybe some other teams. So I think tier 2 saying like they've got a lot of talent. I think they can finish 10, 11 wins like pretty comfortably. And then be a serious threat in the playoffs. That to me is exactly what a tier 2 team is. But yeah, they have some limitations defensively, so they're not going to be tier 1. It's that simple.
They have to tackle better. I mean, it was hilarious to watch this Tampa Bay game. Baker Mayfield got the ball out the fastest time to throw that he's ever had in his career. They'd play quarters. Everybody would be up top. They'd throw it to the flat. People got to come down and make a tackle, and they just can't. And that is what is concerning to me at this point. I'm still worried about the edges. Huff, Nolan Smith, Sweat, just too small. Linebackers, too small. They aren't great against the run. So, yeah, it is a problem on that side of the ball. But I think this offense has more potential than it's showing right now. I think their win against the Packers was pretty legit when they had everybody against a good team and just torched them through the air. And Saquon looks like one of the... Where does Saquon rank amongst NFL players right now? Like, I think he looks like a top 30, 25, 20, I don't know, player in the league
top
overall.
30 is pretty fair.
So,
I mean, I haven't thought about like where he ranks of all NFL players, but I mean, he's probably a top 5 back right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Theo, you're bumping your mic a ton.
You're right. That's my bad.
Or tapping your fingers or something, I'm not sure.
It was my cup. My main take from the Buccaneers versus Eagles game was that I put the Buccaneers in tier 2 as well. And that's kind of what I want your guys' thoughts on.
Yeah, I agree. I'm 100% down with that. I think Baker's playing great ball, and they've got good weapons out on the perimeter, and they've been running more efficiently. So they're kind of a threat offensively against everybody. Now, they're not prone to stinkers, of course, but it feels like they're gonna cruise to like 10, 11 wins right now, and they're absolutely a player. I mean, last year we saw them super competitive in the playoffs, and they don't feel like they've taken a step back. If anything, they've added a new fold to their game. And they could, I mean, they're going to be a serious playoff threat. I think they're going to be a tough out is like the lowest you could be on them. And if a Buccaneers fan was like, we're going to go on a run, I'd be like, yeah, it could happen. I see the vision there. So yeah, I'm totally down with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're the clear favorite to win the South right now. And I mean, I don't think you could be like, oh yeah, this team's going to win their division. I'm going to put them in tier 3. Like, come on, man.
They are looking very good, I think. No one has ever been less washed than Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, first of all. They're getting a bit on the older side.
Yeah.
You know, you never know year to year like what you're going to get out of some of these older receivers, but they just look so fantastic right now.
Mike Evans is going to have 1,000 yards until the day he dies.
He might. And Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator, has really impressed me. I think that their sequencing throughout the course of games, just common sense decisions based on their personnel, like I feel like they're really a smooth operation right now. Again, versus the Eagles, you saw all the quarters shells that they were getting, not only with the safety side, but with the corners as well. Let's just take what the defense gives us, spit it out to the flat, right? Just chisel away on the ground or on these shorter passes early. And then later in the game, what are they doing? They're like faking the screens and then throwing touchdowns over the middle after they've established that. Like, just good stuff there. My notes are over there on the couch when I was watching that game. I'm looking at them. What else did I write down? There were more moments that I just thought were good from Cohen in this offense, like smart use of motion. They had a read option play on a crucial 4th and 2 on the goal line, and Baker kept it and scored. And I thought that was pretty clever. No one really saw it coming. He can move a little bit. It was just a good time to bust it out. Just in general, I don't think there's been a big downgrade from Canales to Cohen, which is good, right? There was a bit of a brain drain there. And then Bowles, this defense looks. Zion McCollum at the cornerback spot is having a breakout year. They're surviving without Antoine Winfield, with Izien and Whitehead as their safeties. They're playing pretty well. David is still playing well. Vea was healthy last week and wrecked the game. Yaya Diaby is an interesting weapon for them, doing a little bit of everything in this defense. There's just a lot of good players, and I think smart coaching, and it's just a smooth organization right now, bringing back all the same guys from the Super Bowl. I've been one of the people being change something, but it just doesn't. Does anything need to be changed?
Well, the thing is, a lot of times you do want to change things, that a lot of these older players typically start to fall off at some point. But like you said, with Evans and Godwin and with David as well, it's all of their older guys are still really good. So it just keeps working.
Yeah. So I think that they, if the Packers matched up against them right now, I wouldn't feel good about Green Bay like you did. They're playing at that level, so. I think, and they were deep in the playoffs last year. So, yeah, tier 2.
Tier 2. I don't have any other teams in tier 2. I don't know if you guys do.
I snuck the Rams in there at the bottom just because Kupp and Nakua are coming back, and Stafford and McVay are still those guys that I think by the end of it, but I don't know, they're too banged up. But I do think that the Rams will be a problem at the end of the year if they can keep their record afloat. It's going to be an issue here.
Do you think a healthy Rams team is significantly better than the Cardinals?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I do. I didn't think so at the beginning of the year, but
yeah.
I mean, we'll talk about the Cardinals later. I don't know. Verse has been showing me something these last few weeks. I wasn't
That's true. The
super
defensive
high.
Line for the Rams is good.
Kobe Turner has looked pretty dominant. I mean, I know the Bears, that line is pretty garbage, but just in general, it's I do see some things from the pass rush. I know, Stafford is just so good, and McVay is just so smart that I think. When a Kupp was healthy, they took the Lions to overtime, even though they had the worst lineman I'd ever seen out there, and that was even without Nakua for most of the game. I don't know if they stay afloat, and maybe they go into the bye week with a horrible record, and they just can't work their way back, and more injuries happen. It's just a lost season, but I do like some of the things I've seen from the Rams this year, so I snuck them into tier 2 because I think they could be dangerous by the end.
Dude, their defense sucks. Their defense is so bad, man. I don't even care about right, we could pretend that Cup and Puka are healthy. I can get down with that. I see the vision. Like, their defense is trash, man. I mean, yeah, the Lions, they took them to overtime. Shout out. And they played a good game, and Stafford's a baller, and sure. And then the Lions are like, hold on a second, wait, we got to lock in. And then they ran it, 7 times and won the game, and the Rams couldn't do anything? Like, come on, I know it's the Lions. And then the next week they turn around and let up, 41 to the Cardinals? And the Cardinals are now 1-3, and their one win is a 31-pointer against the Rams. I don't know, man. Like, they could easily be 0-4 right now. And while I totally buy into the idea that if they get Cup and they get Puka back, they're going to be competitive against anybody, because it's just a combo like that. It makes you a threat, which is what keeps them out of tier 4. But defensively, it's hard to see the upside right now for them with how bad they've been performing. I mean, certainly they went up against, at 24 points, that's probably their best performance point-wise this season, right? That's all they let up against the Bears, but the Bears have had their own problems too. So I don't know, until I see the defense start to string together some good performances. I think they're probably close to dead last in EPA per play or whatever.
They're 31st, aren't they?
Right. So I can't have them in tier 2 with Tampa, who I feel like would be kind of disappointing if they didn't win a playoff game, or the Packers, where it's I still feel that about them, or the Eagles, where it's when they get healthy, look at their offense completely set. Don't get me wrong, I'm there with the hype, but when we say things like it's amazing what Stafford did despite his offensive line, it's well, that offensive line still is who the Rams are, and at a point you are an injured team. So I had them in 3.
Yeah, it's tough to decide. The defense being that low in EPA and giving up all those points every week, it is pretty rough, and it's tough to see where the reinforcements come from, and unless Verse just turns into, or Fisk turns into someone.
They're young, and they've got some pieces that I can get behind. So maybe as the season goes on, they start to gel a little bit more, or they start to develop a little bit more. It's a long year, but I'm trying to balance how much I'm tiering teams by projection versus tiering teams based off what they've done so far and who they are now. And the Rams sitting at 1-3 with a defense that's performed terribly and nobody healthy. It's tier 3, salute Stafford. That's where I've got him at.
Yeah, it's fair. I will point out they are 12th in offensive EPA per play, 9th in offensive success rate through 4 weeks now. That is pretty good considering just how banged up they have been, and they definitely have a top 5 ceiling on that side of the ball once guys start to come back. But will it matter? And without the defenses in their record right now, I'm fine with putting them in tier 3. They were at the bottom of my tier 2.
Okay, all right. Well, we can talk about the Cardinals, finish out the NFC West a little bit. I also have them in tier 3. I could see this being a team that gets put in tier 4 because their defense is also really bad, and they can't get pressure at all. But I do think that as the season goes on, Kyler and Marv and James Conner, I think the offense is another that's going to be good enough to keep them afloat. But they're probably not going to be a playoff team, it looks like.
I don't know if I'm bought in on the wonky Cardinals offense right now. I'll be completely honest with you. They've put up 2 really bad performances in a row.
They have. They should have been in a shootout against the Commanders. The fact that they couldn't do anything against the Commanders defense it's embarrassing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put them in tier 4 for now. I really did. I like Kyler. I like Marv. I've liked what Petzing has done. But these offensive performances are kind of rough these last few weeks, and then the defense is just so bad. They're one of the 3 worst pressure teams in the league. They just don't have the bodies up front, man. They just don't. They didn't last year. They don't this time around. It's Budda Baker putting out a million fires everywhere. And then outside of that, it's who can they actually stop. I mean, we talked about LA being 31st in EPA per play this year. Arizona's 30th. So they were 31st last year. Them and the Commanders were the two worst by a lot. Maybe they've improved the tiniest, teensiest, littlest bit, but it's not nearly enough. It's going to keep them, and the offense would really have to be top 10 to overcome this, and they just don't look like that. When you look at some of the teams I've got in Tier 3, the Dallas Cowboys, the New Orleans Saints, the Washington Commanders, who just blew them out. I just think that they're more balanced teams than the Cardinals are in terms of the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Oh, yeah.
I put the Cowboys in Tier 4.
Oh, my God.
No. Nope.
I did.
And you put the Cardinals above them? Based off of like
the Cardinals
what?
in Tier 4. But dude, the Cowboys defense, I mean, they are the worst run defense I maybe have ever seen. I mean, they are so well.
I promise you, they're not. Actually,
they're not. They're not.
And this
But
defense
they
is
are
not so bad that it takes the Cowboys all the way down to Tier 4. I was going to have a conversation.
The Cowboys have been dealing with injuries as well on defense, and like that's fair. But like, dude, I mean, they're so one-dimensional on both sides of the ball, and the one thing they're supposed to be good at on defense right now, they're not. And I get injuries, but like, dude, this team looks horrible right now.
Worse than the Cardinals.
We were just talking about how if Daniel Jones was even a remotely competent starter, they would have gotten smoked by the Giants.
You know what the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL is actually right now? By EPA per play. The Commanders, who the Cardinals just put up 14 points on. And I want you to keep in mind, the Cardinals put up 14 points on them, and they're still the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
I can't. Look, the Cardinals maybe have upset. Like, I like Kyler. I'm down with him. He's not a perfect QB. He's like a borderline top 10 guy. And when the connection between him and Marv isn't absolutely cooking, I think the offense is not really like scaring me, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about
I'm fine
like
to put the Cardinals in Tier 4. I'm willing to concede on that.
I think the Cowboys are Tier 3 right now because their defense does stink, and it feels like it's not going to get better. Now you've got Micah out as well. Like, it could get pretty tough, and it just feels like the problems aren't going to be fixed. And then on top of that, they can't run the ball. And then on top of that, like, the passing offense just gets stagnant so easily. It feels like they don't have, outside of CD, who is just a beast.
Right.
Like, where is the playmaker? We've talked about this before. Like, where is the guy who goes and creates an explosive play? It's not
to me,
that.
That's why they're Tier 4, man. They've got like one trick on both sides of the ball.
But that doesn't put them down into like. Okay, so how many wins do you think they're going to end the year
trick,
with?
Though, you know,
it is a good trick.
How many wins do you think they're going to end with? Because to me, Tier 4 is like 5, at like the 5-ish range. Obviously, there's with 4 tiers, there's a good amount of range.
I mean, it's tough.
But
this is why I said before I felt like I needed another tier because the Cowboys feel like they're in between, but I need
the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys. Like, who else do we have on this tier? Probably the Falcons.
Yep.
I mean,
Tier 3?
Even then. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Falcons, Saints, Commanders.
You think they're like way worse than the Falcons?
Their defense is way worse.
The Falcons' defense is moving you so much you think they're like way better than the Cowboys?
Yes. Like the Falcons have like really good safeties.
They do have good safeties.
They're also the worst pass rush win rate in the league. Look,
that's true.
Here's the thing: the Cowboys' number one problem right now is like their rush differential. They cannot stop the run and they cannot run. I feel like those are your main two problems. Like, yeah, it sucks that they don't have a second weapon outside of CD in the wide receiver room, but CD and Ferguson and Dak are good enough that the offense is still pretty dangerous, even with just CD. I mean, we saw this last year. Who was their second best wide receiver then, or the year before?
Cooks.
The year before.
Cooks is still there, and he was disappointing last season. He was a disappointing addition. Look, like CD is the most a dominant, like he has been number one in EPA generated the past 2 years. They put him in the slot. There's a lot of the times where he gets free releases or there's a linebacker body on him. He's running up the seam and Dax finds him. They'll pitch it to him. They'll do all these things to get him the ball. And him and Dak are just so good.
They're so locked in.
They're so locked in that they are going to be okay as you go through the season. They'll get Bland back by the end. Trayvon Diggs can follow your best guy around, and I think he's gotten a lot better in coverage as the year has gone on, although he's certainly not a perfect player in terms of maybe the run defense and physicality involved. Maybe if you ran enough double moves at him, he'd bite on one eventually. But I think there is enough here that they still are the Cowboys. They still are the team that has been good in the regular season, and they've gotten to the playoffs. They still have that same formula. It's just deteriorated, which is why instead of a tier 2 team, they're a tier 3 team right now. But because I still think they don't deserve to be in tier 4. That's
okay.
All
I said before the show. I said this. I don't know if you were here, Theo. I told Matt, I feel like we need another tier.
But my problem is not the tier number. You think they are worse than the Cardinals? If the Cowboys went out and lost 42-14 to Washington, there is absolutely, dude. I really don't think that they would, man. Maybe
on them. Like they've looked so disappointing. They really have. I understand.
But that's exactly it. Yes. They're disappointing, and the Cardinals are the scrappy. So if they lose, like, who gives a fuck, right? Like, it doesn't matter at all. If the Cowboys lose, it's like, we'll see. You know, I don't know. So but it's entirely expectation based why you would have the Cowboys in 4, but the Cardinals is like, hey, okay. And honestly, I'm looking at this list of teams, and the Rams are lucky we're putting them up here.
Wait, are they in tier 3, or did I single-handedly get them in tier 2?
Or no, we put the Rams in. Yeah, we put the Rams in tier 3.
All right. Moving on from the Cowboys. I think
we're putting the Cowboys in tier 3.
It's starting to take shape what our tiers are here. We've got the Bears in tier 3. How about this as a question? Do you think at any point this season they will reach tier 2? Do you think
they totally could? They totally could. I have some questions. It comes down to like Caleb and the passing offense there. It's just tough because they have a tough interior offensive line, which we have some teams. Like, we have the Seahawks, who have the same problem. But Geno is so firing on all cylinders, and him and the connection between, like, Lockett and JSN and Metcalf, we don't have those questions. With the Bears, they have that same problem, but they also have a rookie quarterback who has, like, really been, I don't want to say really been struggling with it, but it's been harder to deal with it because you've got that rookie out there. So it's been a learning curve for them. However, their defense has kept them in games that maybe they shouldn't be. If they're a team where, you know, the connection is off and the timing is off and they can't run and Swift stinks, but the defense keeps them in games, that to me keeps them as a tier 3. Absolutely, as the year goes on, if Caleb really starts like getting it down and the timing gets better and he's connecting more on the deep ball and he's finding Rome more and DJ Moore stops pouting, they could move up. And hell, there's some potential for them to have that breakout game here this Sunday at 1 p.m. against my Carolina Panthers. I'm not going to lie. In fact, like we talked about before, it seems very, very likely that's how that's going to go down.
I'm assuming, right? Best team in the NFL?
Yeah, they'll have the best point differential, maybe.
I think that I agree with you that the Bears could move up, although I am starting to get to the point where I'm like, this offensive line just might not have it in them.
There's some teams that have like, okay, the offensive line is bad and that holds them back, and there's some teams that's like, ooh, this is like a disaster. And that's the thing about a lot of these tier 3 teams. Some of them either don't have like a superpower or they have something that's really so bad it's like they're not going to overcome that and like win a playoff game against a serious team. Sometimes you can get a wonky matchup always, but these are teams that I feel like are fighting for the playoffs. It wouldn't shock me if they made it, but definitely are fighting an uphill battle. I think Chicago right now, it's more about the development of Caleb for them anyway, rather than making the playoffs. And we'll see how the season goes on. But with like no data points on Caleb besides the last 4 games, and how this offense has looked, it's tough for me to put them any higher than 3 right now, especially since we've got other teams like, the Cowboys and the Falcons, I'm guessing, the Saints. It's like all those teams are like, capable of going out and winning games. So it's like we don't have them as like a 2-win team or anything, of course.
Yeah, I think the Bears, the defense has been pretty great so far this year. Billings, the defensive tackle, and Garvin Dexter have looked the way I think they needed to look, even though Montez Sweat has not been as insane as he was last season. I think that there have been some other guys stepping up. Taylor, that their line looks more balanced 1 through 4 by a lot than it did last year. The secondary continues to look pretty sick. They've shut a lot of people down. Caleb, he's starting to get better. I mean, the game against Houston is not what the last 2 weeks have looked like. He has been a lot more of a pocket passer. He has hung in there. The offense has been moving the ball down the field a lot better than it had. He's been avoiding the sheer amount of hits that he took in that game. My concern with Caleb now is, okay, you have reined it in. It's looking better. Now it's time to rein it in and not be robotic, I would say. Like, rein it, like I feel like he's so focused on, I'm going to hit the top of my drop and I'm just going to go through my reads. I'm going to stay right here. Okay, well, I need to see you go through your reads with the magic that we know you have within you, but we haven't seen so far this year, because you didn't draft Caleb number 1 overall to be robotic. Yeah, like, it's good that he can operate from the pocket. I think every question that was asked, like, can Caleb just stand there and go and run quick game and do all these things, it's been answered. The answer is absolutely yes. The question now is, can he bring back the magic? So that's what I want to see. But the defense is looking good. I think Caleb can bring back the magic. Rome looks pretty sweet. I still think he's gonna be the top guy by the end of the year. He looks like a monster route runner. He's so light on his feet. I think he looks nuanced, with that just head fakes and creating separation and getting people to bite on certain things. Like, it's looking good for him so far. So there are some parts of the Bears I'm concerned about, but some things that can obviously get better. We have the Commanders in tier 3.
Yes.
They're 3-1. Obviously, Jaden Daniels has been historic. We talked a lot about Jaden in the last episode, so I feel like...
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to rehash.
Obvious.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a 3-1 team. Maybe it feels a little disrespectful to have them in the 3rd tier, because does this kind of feel like, well, you put all like the 3-1 teams in the 1 and 2, and then, the 2 and 2, and like the 2 and 3, like so on and so on. I just think with Washington, again, their defense really has not performed that well overall, and has been saved by their offense performing really well. I do think it will come back down to earth a little bit when they play tougher defenses, and that's to me why I don't think like this win-loss record will continue for them. However, I do think their offense is going to continue to be strong. I think Daniels is going to continue to play well, and that's the important part here. But I think their personnel issues defensively are going to come to light against better teams, and it feels like this is a team that's overachieving in year 1 of a rebuild, but probably is not, again, when we talk about some of the teams ahead of them, like Tampa Bay, where they are is just in a place much, much further along than where Washington is. And that's why when I see people talk about, like, I don't know if you saw, like, Commanders should trade for Davante Adams, I think that's a pretty major overreaction. I like the idea of getting another big guy next to Daniels, another receiver, I mean. We see teams do that all the time with young QBs, and it works out really, really well. But that's way too short-sighted to even for the NFL, which is more short-sighted team building wise than probably any other league, maybe. You can't. I don't think they're quite at that level yet. And again, their defense is dead last in EPA. I mean, it's
right. Yeah, it's just.
Yeah, it feels wrong to put them so low when they're such an outlier on the offensive side of the ball right now in terms of their efficiency. Like, the last 2 weeks, they're twice as good as the next best offense. Like, there's nothing more that they could do. But
they've also played like 3 of the bottom 5 defenses in football.
I don't think it's going to sustain. I really do. As good as this is, I really think it's going to I've seen too many Cliff Kingsbury hot starts, and there are just too many metrics that suggest to me this is kind of weird. They are first by a mile in the amount of screens that they've called. They're first by a mile in the amount of scrambles that they've had. They've got defenses that just cannot crush the pocket and contain it all. To bottom three in terms of PFF grade, in terms of pass rush, and I know PFF grade is whatever, but it matches the eye test, right? These are not good pass rushes, the Bengals and the Cardinals. So the fact that they're going up against these horrible pass rushes, they're scrambling more, according to True Media, more than anybody ever has in the month of September. Just kind of a funny thing when I was looking at where Jaden Daniels ranks like this month in the history of starts. No team on record has scrambled more in the first month of the season than Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders this September. Just doesn't feel like that's going to be able to. He's on pace for how many carries? Like 180, like something like that. A lot. It just can't continue to happen against bad defenses. There's a lot of growth that still needs to happen, and we don't know. He's looked so good. It's been so efficient. They've hardly punted. He certainly could be capable of getting to another level and keeping them maybe not at number one by a mile, but in the top half of the league, in the top 10 of the league. Certainly, who's to say? But I've just seen too many Kingsbury offenses completely fall apart. Right. And I just didn't have that type of grade on Jaden as a prospect. I know that I should ignore everything coming out of the draft, and he's in the NFL now, but still, I can't fully buy in. So the fact that the defense ranks so low, I know that they just had a good game against the Cardinals, but still, I'm very cautious about this Commanders start. I really am. But they are starting to move. That game against the Cardinals definitely started to move me after I was more out. Like, that was a total fluke after Cincinnati.
Yeah. And then we have the Falcons and the Saints in tier 3 as well, I'm guessing. And then
two pretty even teams there, like mid quarterback, some nice defensive players. Like we got to keep a move on with the show. I think Saints and Falcons fans know where they're they know where they stand right now.
And then we've already talked about the Cardinals are in tier 4. Panthers, I imagine, are also here, and then the New York Football Giants.
Yep.
Right. I don't know if there's much explanation that's needed for all of that. The Giants are brutal, and the Panthers are better with Dalton, but their defense still really sucks. And also, they've gone up against two defenses I don't really buy with Dalton, and I think if they go up against a great defense, it could not be as good as it's looked right now. But I don't want to be negative about the Panthers. I don't want to be negative because I think it's looking more good than bad for them in terms of what they did last offseason.
The Robert Hunt All-Pro campaign is
there. We go. You got it. Yeah.
He's been. I mean, they've been the best pass protection offensive line like in football, and I know they have like the Bengals. We've talked about how bad of a pass rush they are, right? So you can kind of bump the numbers against them, but still, like they went up against the Raiders. They're not a horrible pass rush. They're maybe not they're not as great as maybe you'd hope going into the season, but they're not bad at it, and they completely shut them down.
Right, I started. I'm waiting a few weeks. I'm watching and waiting, but like the Panthers. Kind of, you won't notice because they'll be bad anyway. Did the Panthers kind of cook this offseason? I doubted their offensive line moves. Clearly, so far that's worked. The jury is still out, but he's showed some real life, even if it's up and down. If Brooks comes back and he looks good, you obviously nailed the Deontay Johnson trade. Like, I don't know. It might be a new era in Carolina. People aren't ready for that, I'm sure. I got Adam Schefter saying, Deontay Johnson's on expiring. The Panthers got to trade him like they didn't trade for him when he was already on and expiring. You guys see that? That made me so mad. That's the type of shit that makes a fan of a bad team angry. It's like, what are you talking about, man?
The Chiefs are entitled to your good players, Matt.
Right. It's like It's just so funny. It's like 4 games, and it's like,
they're trying to make a Super Bowl run. You're in tier 4. They need Deontay Johnson more than you do.
That's true. And they'll give him back after the season, actually, is what I've heard.
That's too bad, man. He's putting up record shit with Don. We got bigger fish to fry than Super Bowls.
True. And then the Giants, do we want to explain on
Daniel
that a little bit?
Neighbors real good.
Neighbors is great. But
We would have created a new 5th tier if it
Horrible.
wasn't for Neighbors.
Dude, I'm looking at the PFF pressure numbers to try to dunk on the Panthers here for a second, and it was backfiring on me because I just saw that Rashawn Gary has as many pressures as Sebastian Joseph Day this year.
Ooh.
That's tough.
Looking for
I can see it.
Panthers and finding Packers. Should they be tier 3?
You know who's second on the Panthers in pressures?
Nope. Oh,
I think it's Clowney's number 1, which should be
Right.
easy. Which
You
should
would
be
hope.
easy guess. Is that right? Did I miss anybody? Matt, do you have a guess?
no, it's the guy. Is it the guy that we cut?
It could be. I've never heard this guy's name, I think, before.
His name is slipping me too. I'm sick.
Oh, no, I missed it. It's Deshaun Williams.
Shout out to Sean Williams, man.
And then it's Charles Harris. You're thinking of PV, who's also tied. There's a bunch of guys.
No,
with
I'm not
5.
thinking of PV. PV's still on the team. I'm thinking like Ofa, I think. I could be wrong. He had like 1 sack. He got cut like after week 2, and he had like 1 sack. And it's like, we just cut our sack leader. Just like, yeah, I guess. But, you know.
That's tough, man.
Dude, the Panthers front set. Shaq Thompson out for the year? Dude, fuck me, man. It's rough. I feel bad for him. It sucks. He's GOAT Panther.
Goat Panther.
Shout out to
I
him.
can
I don't
think of a couple of guys who might be better.
I don't
But,
know. I'm continuing to just go through the pressure. Aiden Hutchinson has 40, which we already mentioned.
Yeah,
the
bro.
Next,
Aiden Hutchinson
the next
has
best
40.
player with pressures is Zach Allen with 23.
Yes. And then Carl Granderson after that. And then Grenard tied for 3rd.
That's crazy. But anyway,
And then
Ed
Brock-
Broncos phony 7-win season. We should have known.
I think I had them at 7 wins
Did
in my
you?
record predictions. Yes.
You knew. You should really victory lap a take like that. You should go into like.
I told everyone.
you they'd have 7 wins.
I told everyone that the Broncos would have 7 wins. I told everyone.
No one believed me.
You don't know, Bob, that it's a screenshot for one of those videos where you're like nailing somebody having 6 wins. I like that.
But do you guys want to get into the Stay Hot locks? Those are our tier. That's our tier list, our consensus tier list. We'll post it on Twitter, of course. I would read it off, but my screen there it is. Our Super Bowl favorites. Our tier 1 is Lions, 49ers, Vikings. Tier 2 is Seahawks, Packers, Eagles, Bucks. Tier 3 is Rams, Cowboys, Bears, Falcons, Saints, Commanders, and Tier 4 is Cardinals, Panthers, and Giants. That's actually only one team, or I guess 2 teams off from my personal list because I just had the Cowboys and Cardinals flipped.
Yeah, I had the Vikings and. See, now that I'm explaining it, having the Vikings and Rams in the same tier doesn't quite sound right, but I did have them in the same tier in terms of how I think they could look by the end of the year. But by the end
That's
of the
fair.
year is a long ways from now, and the Rams
A few
might be
months away.
they might be truly cooked if they don't get the receivers back soon. So, yeah, I think
But-
our list is good.
Yeah, I like
obviously.
it. And if you hate it in the comments, don't let us know. But Matt, please explain the Stay Hot locks for those who might be new.
We all pick teams to win. We lock teams to win in the style of a snake draft. So one person will pick one team, and then another person will pick another team, and it comes back around like that. You can't pick the same team as somebody else, obviously. And for every game you get right, you get 1 point any given week. However, you have to get all of the games right in 1 week, or you get 0 points, unless you pick a team to win and it happens to be a tie, in which case it's a null. So if I pick 3 teams, 2 of them win, 1 tie, I get 2 points. If I pick 3 teams, all of them win, I get 3 points. If I pick 3 teams, 2 of them win, 1 loses, I get no points at all. You also have the ability to challenge somebody if they pick, let's say, the Bears to beat my good old Carolina Panthers, I can stand up on my soapbox and say, no, that won't happen, and pick Carolina, and I get double points if I'm right.
Bang. Think that's everything. You nailed it, Matt. Well, going over last week's Stay Hot locks, Matt, you locked the New York Jets.
Oof.
Damn, man. Like, what the hell is this shit, dude? Like I'm just picking the spreads. Like, I'm just like, Vegas, save me, bro.
I don't know, man.
They look so good against the Patriots. I'm like, we're cool. Like, that offense is going to be... And they lose 10-9. Okay, bro. Shout out to the Broncos defense. We'll get one here eventually, bro.
I'm sure you will. You're almost on the board. You're almost on the board. You still have 0 points. I picked the Chiefs. They won. I have 3 points now. Let's go. Theo, you picked the 49ers and the Texans. Welcome to the board. You've got 2 points.
Yes, the Texans gave me a run for the money here, but they did pull it out. And then the 49ers, jinxes aren't quite real, guys. I'll say that just because things happen in the past, and I picked the 49ers to win over the Vikings or whatever, and they lose, and the Rams, and they lose. It of course doesn't mean they're destined to lose to the Patriots. So I wasn't too worried about that one.
Well, so I figure... I mean, Theo, you won the week, but I'm still leading. So who gets to decide the pick here?
I think I do.
You do because you won the week? Is that how... Matt, can you confirm?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So, Theo, do you want the first pick or do you want the turn?
I'll go first. I feel like I haven't gone first in like years because I didn't win hardly at all last year. So I'll go first, and I will select the... This is an interesting one. So let's go with the Seahawks over the Giants. Good old tier 4 team. You want to bet against them almost more than you want to bet on good teams. I think the Seahawks
the strategy is betting against bad teams typically.
I think we'll see how many players the Seahawks get back, but even so, I think Gino's going to put some good points up on the board.
Yeah, I agree. I guess I'm going second then, and I will take the 49ers over the Cardinals. 49ers have a tendency to blow games they shouldn't, but I don't think this will be one of them. So that brings it to you, Matt. You have the turn here.
Usually I'm not a go with 2 when there aren't strong picks, but I might. First off, I'm taking the Bears over my Panthers. I've said before, we know how this one goes down. The Panthers defense is really horrifically bad. Their front seven is really horrifically bad. I don't think they can expose the Bears' bad offensive line. So, and if I'm wrong, that's going to be a great day on Twitter. If I'm wrong and if Caleb throws an interception, you better block me, man. I'm going to let you know right now.
Real.
And then I don't know. I'm debating I could take Green Bay over the Rams, but the Rams are the perfect feisty team that blows your lock. They're
2-2, man.
Right. KC over the Saints. This will be the game where the Chiefs offense really finally can't get it done, and it's obviously
the Chiefs. They're playing like they want to lose one.
Right. I feel like I like the bet against.
There's no shame in getting on base either.
Yeah, all right. I'll just take my Bears over my Panthers. The Bears over my Panthers, and we'll stick with that. I got to get some points. I got to see it going, and then I'm hitting a nasty 7-teamer.
I'm done. Also, I'm not going to do any more.
I'm usually the one who keeps his foot on the gas of this group. I'm going to take the Ravens over the Bengals.
I thought about that one.
But Burrow has been playing super well, though, so this is a real...
and it's like, dude, the Ravens should be able to run, and they they get away from it for no reason because
the one good Bengals defensive game.
nah, what's going to happen, it'll be like Bengals get ball first, they drive down, they score. You're like, all right, no big deal. We can control the ground game. Ravens like fumble the kickoff. It's 10-0, and then they panic and they run 14 times in this game.
Yeah.
Aguilar ends up with 14 targets. You're like, dude, what the fuck happened out there, man?
But I just for this to keep my reputation as the guy who goes the extra mile, I do think that I feel okay about that. I just think that this defense is so bad. I think it's going to be a shootout, but the Ravens defense seems to be kind of locking in. They just blew out the Bills. I think they're going to pull out this win. I do.
Okay.
So we'll see how it goes.
I like the pick. I like the pick. I think they're going to win as well.
Respect it. But yeah, I'm not willing to do it
Cool.
myself. But those are the stay hot locks. Unless Theo, you want to take another.
No, I'm worried about.
Numbers don't make sense on that.
The Packers, Rams. You know, I like the Packers. Fuck it.
Oh,
They'll win.
You've jinxed them. You have.
No,
Theo.
Yep.
I would think you would have learned your lesson.
Wait, hold on. Let me Google Puka Nacua real quick.
I don't
No, it's
even. He's on
already locked
IR.
in.
He's
I
not even
already wrote it
eligible.
down.
Yep, he already wrote it down. Yep, you already. It's like chess.
All right,
Once you
fine.
finish saying the name.
Cooper Kupp to miss third straight game versus Packers. Okay. We have a lot of injuries too, though.
Getting
It doesn't
cooked by
matter.
Tutu Atwell. It's sad.
Christian Watson not practicing. Jair Alexander not practicing.
You're
I
gonna
already
get
said
one
it. I'm
phony
locking him.
pressure on Jordan Love or on
Jordan Love.
or on Stafford.
We got Jordan Love and we got Jaden Reed. So.
All right,
And we
man.
got Zach Tom. So
Best
we're
of
going to be all
luck to
good.
you. The stay hot locks. Unless Theo, you want to take another one.
No.
Okay. I am locking the 49ers. I have 3 points. Theo is locking the Seahawks, Ravens, and Packers. He has 2 points. Matt, trying to get on the board, has 0 points, is locking the Chicago Bears against the Carolina Panthers. Those would be the Stay Hot locks, and that'll do it for another episode of Stay Hot. Let us know if you enjoyed our little tier list. We'll do the same thing next week for the AFC, and we'll be back Sunday night or Monday morning to recap Week 5 of the NFL season. First week of bye weeks, is that correct? So
I believe so.
look at that. Should be a fun weekend. Excited to watch. And until next time, thank you all so much for tuning in. And we will catch you on the Flippity Flop.